Item 3.1, our update on the activities of the Foundation for California Community Colleges. We have our power trio here.
Yes, you do, sir.
Whoever would like to start.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's nice to see everyone again. When I was last here, we chatted a little bit about me coming back and presenting some history about the foundation, when we were founded.
Hang on, could you introduce yourself? We do
Oh.
have a new board member.
I'm Jan Dehesh, the president of the board of the Foundation of California Community Colleges.
Hi, I'm Keitha Mills.
Keitha.
How's that? I'm Keitha Mills. I'm the interim president and CEO of the Foundation for California Community Colleges.
And I'm Carrie Wood. I think it was on previously. There we go. I'm Carrie Wood, Vice President of Resource Development and Communications for the Foundation.
Thank you.
Great. You should have received a packet, a 3-ring binder with all of the information of the foundation. And I'm going to just briefly go through a couple of points, and I'll let Keitha and Carrie as well, and then also give you the opportunity to ask questions as we go through. I think one of the main points, though, is our mission and vision statements, which I think is important to discuss or to bring forward. Our mission has always been to benefit, support, and enhance the missions of the California Community Colleges. And within that, the vision is to be able to be an innovator and leader in increasing system resources, efficiency, and effectiveness. And sometimes we go about that in completely different ways than might be the norm, but I think we've been very effective in doing it. We were incorporated in 1998. We're headquartered here in Sacramento. The staff, we have 141 employees and over 500 student assistants. That's usually a point that most people don't realize, that we are as big an organization as we are. We have an operating revenue of $40 million. And we have a statewide presence, all 112 colleges and 72 districts in the system, as well as other colleges and universities in California. We're also recognized nationally. Colorado, North Carolina, Washington, D.C., just to name a few of the states that we do work with other community college foundations. We also have some points of pride that we have been able to do since our founding in 1998. We've provided over $200 million in direct grants, support, and cost savings to colleges. And that's just what we've tracked. So we do believe that number is much higher. We've contributed more than $2.5 million to the college system. We've grown grant, contract, and fee-for-service revenues to over $40 million. We have established total investment funds worth $80 million. And we spearheaded a historic statewide fundraising effort with the endowment of $68 million to the California Community Colleges Scholarship Endowment, which is the first of its kind here in California, and we're very proud of that. Some of the programs that we have, we went into a lot more detail in your binder, but I'm just going to flag a few of them. The California Connects Digital Literacy Program. We serve over 5,800 MESA students on 33 campuses. Some of the other things that we do that you probably would not be aware of is the Bureau of Automotive Repair Program. And we've trained over 250 smog check technicians throughout the state. Our College Buys purchasing program, we've actually been able to track that we've saved over $7.3 million on furniture, equipment, and supplies in 2007 alone for the community colleges. We have a nursing centralized placement system, which has increased the enrollment capacity in San Francisco Bay Area of the nursing programs by 20%. Again, those are just a few of our points of pride, and I'd be happy to discuss many, many more of them as we go on and as I get to know all of you a little better. We've actually put a board member roster in the 3-ring binders, so you have the information of all the board members. And one other thing that we included was the org chart for the foundation. If you've got your binder, it's actually behind section 5. That is, if you've got a magnifying glass. To get all 141 people onto one page isn't easy. But I did want you to see who is part of this organization, how large an organization it is, and how it's sectioned out and how it's run. And actually, Keitha will go more into detail on the organization and what's going on, as well as the financials.
Great.
Keitha?
Can I borrow your binder, Jan?
You sure can.
Thank you. So what we hope to do with this binder was provide kind of an orientation about the foundation, about who we are, what we do, the various programs that we run, the people that make the programs run, and that sort of thing. And so what I'd like to do is maybe just walk you quickly through the rest of the tabs of the binder as we move into past tab 5. And tab number 6 is our fiscal year 2012 budget. And as Jan mentioned, last year we were at over $40 million. This year our current budget is about $38 million, and we've budgeted very conservatively to just budget the revenues that we absolutely know are coming in the door. And as you guys know, every year there's always these new things that come up that are unexpected. So we wholly expect to beat this budget. But our current budget is $38 million of revenue. And what we strive to do every year is to eke out a little bit of kind of net margin to help us build reserves, because those unrestricted reserves are what help us in our kind of long-term viability as an organization. So we've budgeted a very modest, just over $200,000 of net income that would go into unrestricted reserves, which we also hope to beat as well. The next page in that same section is our audited financial statements for fiscal year 2011. And this is one of the items that we are required to present to you every year, is our audited financial statements. So this, not only will this act as an orientation, but this will also act as the presentation of our annual audit. You guys have seen these numbers before. The year-end numbers, I believe, were reported either at the last meeting or the meeting before. It's a clean audit. It's all good news. We ended the year with a positive bottom line. And there really isn't anything unusual or out of the ordinary that I would bring to your attention, but would be happy to answer any questions or walk through this if somebody would like to walk through it.
Member McDougall.
Yes, I have some questions, and please excuse me if they're a bit elementary. I'm trying to learn. I appreciate the information, both the quality of it and the comprehensiveness of it. And I have 4 quick questions. Number 1, I'd like to understand a bit more what is meant by the operating revenue of $40 million, whether that is an endowment or whatever it may be. I'd just like to understand that. Second, I'd like to understand why there is work with other states. So it's obviously takes place because it's beneficial, but it sort of escapes me, given that it's a foundation for the California community colleges. The third is the programming effort. And again, there may be very, very good reasons why the foundation is in the programming. I'm just really surprised by it, because I assumed that all the programming would be a focus, if you will, within the Chancellor's office and not necessarily the foundation. But there are probably good reasons why the programming takes place actually through the foundation. It just escapes me. And then the fourth and final area is the part of the mission that relates to supporting, encouraging local foundations to prosper on the local level, because it would appear to me that the expertise that is contained in the central foundation could have a substantial and positive rippling effect throughout the system by being in a leadership supportive role of emerging foundations on the campuses. And I still think we're tremendously underutilized on our fundraising capability within the system as a whole, and whether this is a high priority, medium, low priority, and would be helpful. So,
Okay.
Again, those 4 areas if
Certainly.
you could.
Yeah,
Sure,
and
I'll
if I
let you-
could just interject, Member McDougal, this was also the reason why, I think it was our last meeting, I talked about in meeting with the foundation that we decided that we really needed to do an orientation for Board of Governors members once a year, once every 18 months, because I know myself coming onto this board, I had no idea what the foundation does, why it does it, what the dollars are, how many people, the mission, and those kinds of things. So this is a prime example. Your questions are very good, and a good opportunity for all of us and our new member to learn as well.
Sure. So I'll start with question number 1, which is regarding our revenue stream. We generated $43 million of what I'll call operating revenue over the last fiscal year. And that was in addition to the endowment revenue that we generated. We generated about $10 million of endowment revenue that's permanently restricted. So when we talk about the $40 million budget, that is our pure operations. And what that represents is a variety of different types of funding that our organization is able to attract at the statewide level and then re-grant or redistribute out for the benefit of the colleges. So a lot of the programs and services that we look to get involved in are things that funders or contractors are more interested in contracting at the statewide level, because they can contract with us more efficiently, and we can more efficiently push those funds down to the colleges. Whereas, the other option would be for these funders or vendors or service providers to try to go out and sell to each of the individual colleges or foundations, and that's much less efficient from them. So they would rather come to us as that statewide hub. We have the connection with the Chancellor's office, which gives us a bit of influence to be able to provide these discounted products and services to the campuses. So of the $43 million that comes into our organization, total expenses, so we've got $43,150,000 that came in, and we had $43,027,000 that went out. And so for every dollar that comes into the foundation, I think the statistic is 92 cents of every dollar that comes into the foundation goes back out into the system. So we provide a tremendous value to the system every year. That's ranging, as you can see, anywhere from $38 million to $43 million over this past year.
If I may just follow up, if that would be okay, because
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry. You dealt with questions 1 and 3 simultaneously, which is fine. And on the programming area, my understanding of your response to that is that the reason why it's done, and it's done in very close collaboration with the Chancellor's office, it has the ability to attract more funds because funders in some cases are perhaps reluctant to work with the complexity of state government, but they will work through a foundation. So the money comes in to a greater extent than it otherwise would, and the system of getting it out there, again, I would assume is highly collaborated with the Chancellor's office and with all the campuses. But it adds to efficiency, it adds to greater volume of dollars, and one would expect effectiveness as well. So that is the question on programs. I think that's what I was looking for an
Great.
understanding, and you
Well
provided
said, by the way.
it.
Thank you.
The operating revenue, I do believe I understand that, but you also mentioned an endowment. What is the size of the endowment that the foundation owns?
Sure. So the total scholarship endowment, the Osher Scholarship Endowment, is just over $67 million. A portion of that is we hold the entire $67 million. However, a portion of that endowment is actually the asset of the colleges. So our portion of the endowment is let's see, 30, almost $35 million. And the portion that we hold on behalf of the colleges is the balance of
But that is a, if I may, again, that is a restricted endowment where the funding from that endowment must go for the specific purpose of
Correct.
scholarships.
That's correct.
Does the foundation have a general unrestricted endowment that it owns? And if so, what is the magnitude of that?
That's a great question. We do have another investment fund, the Nursing Education Investment Fund, and it totals right around $10 million. Technically, that fund is not permanently restricted. However, we do treat it as a restricted endowment. Really, the fund is meant to fund nursing education initiatives throughout the community colleges. The grant agreement is written such that there is a provision that we could use that in a time of dire need. But the idea would be that we don't want to get there, and we don't want to rely on that as an unrestricted fund. So I think the more realistic answer to that is that our unrestricted funds are, I think I've used the word, it's quite skinny. At the end of the year, we have just over $1 million of unrestricted net assets on an organization that's bringing in, $40 million a year. So that's an area of significant focus for us as we move forward, as we look to our long-term viability. It's those unrestricted reserves that are going to ensure the long-range viability of the organization. It's something that's really, really important to us.
Well, that's very helpful, just to know that you have over $1 million in unrestricted. At least that provides a base of security, but I would concur with the objective of trying to expand that. And then if you could, the other two questions.
Okay, so the out-of-state work that we do, the primary program where we have expanded out of state is our Nursing Resource Center, and that's an initiative that was initially funded by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, and it's a software program where we help connect students in the community colleges to clinical placements at the hospitals. And that initiative started in the Bay Area, where there was a Bay Area collaborative put together that Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation helped fund. We expanded throughout California. There's now a collaborative in Los Angeles and Bakersfield and several other places in California. The idea behind the investment that the Moore Foundation made was that they wanted us to build this program for primary use in the Bay Area, and then expand the utilization of that program into a business model that would then be self-sustainable. So their idea was to give us the seed funding to build it, and do some marketing in California, and then go out there and sell this as a best practice that began here in California that could then be used nationwide. And then that funding, that fee-for-service business model that's expanded nationwide, would then help keep the costs very low for continued use in California. So that was their vision, and that's what we have ultimately achieved. And we've now taken that program nationwide into many of the states that you heard Jan mention, and that's now a business model that we're very proud of, and something that we kind of look to some of our other initiatives to see, are there things that we are doing that are really groundbreaking that we could tout as, hey, this started in California, it's a really great thing for the community colleges, and in this case for the nursing industry in general. Let us sell it to you.
I appreciate the response, and again, the reason for the question from my perspective is that personally, I would want the maximum of the focus and almost exclusive focus to be on California and what happens to the California community colleges. But what I heard in your answer was that there are benefits that are accrued on a case-by-case basis of going out of state. At a minimum, it reduces the overall operating cost, which has a benefit to the colleges in California by lowering what it costs them to link in and utilize the system. So I understand that. Does it produce, if you will, a quote, profit, end quote, that goes beyond just meeting your operating costs for the program, so it helps the benefit for the foundation as well?
Sure. So, as you know, we're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And so, our ultimate goal, we need to be business-minded, and we need to make sure that we're covering our costs, but our ultimate goal is not to make a profit. And so the business model around the Nursing Resource Center is really centered around keeping the costs affordable and low for our California constituents, because that's our mission, is to serve the California community colleges. And so the business model and the pricing model is set so that we are sure to cover our internal costs of running the program, and then subsidizing the costs for the California community colleges. There are tax implications, of course, of trying to run, a business model that is a profitable business model, and so we walk a really fine line there.
I wasn't thinking so much of a profit per se, but at least a capability of meeting some of the overhead costs that would be going beyond the operational costs.
Absolutely.
Does it contribute to meeting the overhead costs?
Yes, it does.
And the last question that I had was in terms of the local foundations and the development of local foundations throughout the state, how beneficial this can be, particularly at a time such as we're going through right now, and what you perceive the role of the foundation to be in that regard.
So I'd actually like to start to answer the question, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Carrie, who's our Vice President of Resource Development. This question is an excellent question, and I think one that we grapple with, of kind of what is our role in fundraising at the statewide level as it supports, the community college foundations and the colleges across the state. And one of the things that we struggle with when we strive to answer this question is, I think the basic answer is yes, this should be an integral part of our role in supporting the importance of fundraising at the community colleges. The tough question around this is, how is it funded? So as you guys know, we receive no funding from the state, or no sort of funding to fund infrastructure. And so every dollar that comes into our organization, we have to work really hard to make sure that we are kind of clipping off enough of a coupon to cover our overhead costs, which includes fundraising. And in many of in all of the kind of the state and federal contracts, when you calculate your indirect rate, the first thing they exclude are fundraising costs. So it's this real dilemma of, we have fundraising infrastructure that is very important to us, and that we work very hard to try to fund through our various grants and contracts. However, trying to attract kind of discretionary funding to fund those types of activities is very, very difficult. With that said, we do have several initiatives that are in progress to try to find those funders that are interested in funding those types of activities. And maybe with that, I would turn it over to Carrie and let her talk a little bit about those initiatives.
Thank you. Just to add, I do want to address some of the things that we are doing to support the colleges in their fundraising efforts. While minimal, and yes, much room for improvement and growth, we are the fiscal sponsor for the Network for California Community Colleges Foundation. As you may know, it's a member organization that has about 90 of the colleges engaged, and it is an educational forum. It's a networking setting. It's an opportunity for the college foundation staff and leadership to really come together and get additional training in the area of fundraising, but also to work together on best practices. So that's one way that we are supporting the colleges. As you know as well, but I will reiterate, in our role with the Osher initiative in that campaign, we were very actively engaged in working together with the colleges on providing resources, education, guidance, materials, those kinds of things. However, to Keitha's point, all unfunded, and really just the nature of our very lean staff to be able to carry out. So we'll get into a little bit more information coming up here in a bit related to the Kresge funded capacity building study, where we do see some potential for generating capacity building funds to be able to do this very thing. So if you'll bear with us, we'll get into a little bit more detail then.
Thank you very much.
Member Baum.
I just had a quick question on the budget too. On the line net assets released from restriction, $8.4 million. What is that as a revenue? Where does that come from?
I'm sorry, could you,
It says on the revenue page, it says 8.4 million, a significant portion of your revenue is net assets released from restrictions.
oh, yes, okay. So what that is many of our grants are multi-year grants where a funder will award us $10 million to implement a program over 3 to 5 years. And what the accounting rules say is that when you receive that type of funding, if there's no contingency around that funding, if it's basically, we've given them a proposal, this is what we've said we were going to do, they've given us the money and said, go do it. The accounting rules say you must recognize that revenue when it's received or when it's committed. And then, and it gets recognized as temporarily restricted. So it's temporarily restricted when the money is awarded, and then it's released through unrestricted as you actually accomplish the items and activities that you promised to accomplish.
So it's kind of your grant pipeline of funding.
Exactly,
It does.
exactly.
Because that's a significant portion of the revenue, and so I'll be interested to watch and see how you maintain that section. Then I was also surprised to see you have a 7.6 million for salaries and wages for your staff, and then the student payroll is over $5 million. Where
Yeah.
are you employing students up and down the state? Or-
We are employing students all over the state. We currently have, we just broke the over 500 mark
What do they do
of
for you?
students that we've employed. They work for all types of state agencies, Water Resources Board, the Waste Management Services. I think the Chancellor's Office actually has a handful of students through our contracts.
So these agencies contract with the foundation, they get student workers, kind of like work-study type?
Exactly.
But is it work-study funded, or is it a separate type of program?
You know, that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure where the funding comes from each of the state agencies. They're able to contract with us, and then we actually hire the students. So that helps the state agencies not actually have to go through the hiring process.
So an agency will go to the foundation and say, I'd like to have a couple of paid student interns, and they have the funding. And then I see.
And typically, the way it works is we have annual contracts where we'll negotiate kind of a bulk contract that will fund up to X million dollars in student assistant needs, and then the state agency will then work with our human resources department to identify, okay, these are the needs that we have that can be filled by a student assistant. We help them through that recruiting process and onboarding process, and then we handle all of the back office kind of payroll and HR related functions for them.
And lastly, how do you find the students? Do you work with local campuses to conduct the outreach?
We do. So we do kind of a broad recruiting technique where we definitely work with the local campuses, and then we actually go out to some of the UCs and just try to get kind of word of mouth out. But the primary objective is to try to recruit from our community colleges that are nearby, you know, where the students would be working, so that we provide those students with not only learning opportunities that are connected to their plan of study, but also kind of an additional revenue stream to help them, you know, fund their education.
Okay, thank you.
Chancellor Scott.
Yes, just maybe some additional clarification, and if I say something wrong, correct me. But so that the board and certainly our two members of the foundation board have a great understanding of what's happening in the foundation. I've been here 3 years, and as I recall, when the foundation first began, the Community College Foundation, it was primarily programs. It wasn't involved in fundraising at all. It was an arm that did programs. And in answer to Member McDougall's question, normally whenever you get a grant, you get administrative overhead. And you hope that in some way or another, there might be, we dare not use the word profit, but that maybe we will get more overhead than we actually have to expend. And so that's the way it started. Well, then about 3 or 4 years ago, the foundation began to move more aggressively in the area of fundraising. And of course, the biggest one was the Osher Foundation, which gave us $25 million gratis to start with, and then said that for every $2 you raise, we'll give you another So we're now, is it 67 million? Is that about what the Osher Foundation is? However, I will point out that the Osher Foundation didn't give any money for the operation. And so really, in a sense, the foundation had to be very economical in the way that they went about it. But, local foundations are helped by this foundation in terms of their annual conference and other ways, and particularly in ways in which they help them raise money and for the Osher Foundation, because these colleges suddenly caught on to the fact that for every $2 they raised, they would get 50% if they would give the money over to the Osher Foundation, which is incidentally overseen by a very capable, I believe it's J.P. Morgan Chase, that is the investment guide on all these millions of dollars. So I just thought I'd add a little bit to what was being said. And also, we greatly appreciate the fact that every year the foundation this year gave us $300,000 because there are some expenses that we have as a chancellor's office that cannot be paid for by the state. And so as a result of that, I mean, we're careful about the way we spend it. You know, even food for people who come in and you know, work with us and so forth, that has to be paid for. So we are generously helped as a chancellor's office, and there is a lot of cooperation. Sometimes we go to the foundation because, frankly, the state regulations and rules are so complex and difficult that it is easier to do it through the foundation than it is through the chancellor's office, which, as you know, is a state agency. So I'm just adding these words to these three here. I've explained this extremely well, but I thought I could add a few little informational items that I've garnered in my relationship with the foundation and have deeply appreciated what the foundation does.
Please proceed.
So just quickly, so the tab after the audited financial statements is our strategic plan, and we are currently operating under a strategic plan that runs from fiscal year 2012 through 2013. So we have basically a year and a half under this current strategic plan. So that means that we will very quickly be moving into kind of a next phase of strategic planning. And so that will be occurring probably over the next 12 months. And then the last tab is just kind of a variety of marketing materials that we use for distribution and marketing our programs and services. I would point out that all of these materials are produced in-house. We have a fantastic creative team, marketing team, communications team that does a great job in kind of defining who we are and what we do and creating these collaborative materials. So I hope that you enjoy those. So I hope, and that's kind of who we are and what we do, and I hope that you guys find this useful, and this can kind of work as a handbook as we go throughout the year and we talk about our various programs and services, as we talk about things that this might be a good reference back to as we reference programs. Oh, let me go find the pull tab that talks about that particular program and understand a little bit more about what that program is. And we will, at Mr. Himmelstein's request, try to update this every kind of 12 months to 18 months, and we'll work with you guys as to what makes sense on that, because things do change quite rapidly in our organization. So with that, I'd like to transition back to the PowerPoint that's in your booklet. Oh, sorry.
I did have two questions. How many people are working in your office that's in the Chancellor's office building?
Oh, that's a good question.
And then my second question is, I thought in the back of my mind I had heard that you have other offices besides the ones on the campus. So where are the other offices?
That's a great question. So we have 141 total employees, and I'm going to kind of guesstimate here. I would guess there's probably between 60 to 80 in the Sacramento office. We do have a Los Angeles office where we run a youth and adult services program out of LA. And then we have smog check referee centers that are all across the state of California. So we operate 33 smog check referee centers that are housed within community colleges that work collaboratively with the automotive training centers at those community colleges. And so that would represent kind of the balance of employees throughout the state.
So you have this office and the LA office, basically?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And are you planning on keeping the LA office?
So, interesting you ask that. That particular grant is one that is currently at risk, and we are evaluating our ability to continue on with that program. It's been significantly revamped, and the financial model does not currently look feasible for us, but we are continuing to evaluate. So if that funding stream and that program were to be something that we were not to pursue in the future, we likely would not maintain that Los Angeles office. It's currently fully funded by a programmatic grant funding stream. It makes sense to have employees on the ground there in LA because of that particular program. Thank you. You're welcome. So I thought I would talk just a little bit about the transition. So we're about kind of 60 days into the transition, and under kind of my new role as interim president and CEO. And I thought it might be helpful to just talk a little bit about what's been going on over the last 60 days. And so, you know, the primary, there's been kind of several areas of primary focus, and I think one has been kind of this sense of revitalized collaboration and communication with the chancellor, with the chancellor's office staff, the vice chancellors, with the board of governors, with our board, and just sort of kind of increasing that open communication and collaboration as we look forward to, you know, where is our organization going from here, and what is the strategic direction of our organization, making sure that we are being very open with our constituents and that our strategies align with the needs of all of our constituents. I've spent a lot of time reaching out to our key vendors and partners. We do a lot of business with a lot of large vendors statewide, and so it's been really important to reach out to them and have them understand that we are moving forward and that there is someone in place that is you know, continuing to run the business. We've spent a lot of time over the last 60 days looking at our strategic plan and evaluating our accomplishments over the last 2 years about how have we performed against what we said we were going to do, what are the lessons learned over the last couple of years as we've been trying to perform against what we said we were going to do. And then from that, we've developed a clear annual plan. So we've developed, really for the first time in our history, an annual plan document that outlines very clear action items and accountable deliverables so that everybody in the organization knows here's what's expected of me to help achieve these very clear goals that are part of our strategy. And it's really worked to give everybody kind of a clear roadmap of where we're going. And so those documents will be things that we'll be presenting to our board at our November 30th board meeting. And it's been a lot of work, but it's been really rewarding work to try to get that clarity in that vision. In addition to that, we've done really a robust restructuring of our organization, and really at all levels, but starting at the executive management team and then all the way down to the executive director and director level. And I'm going to kind of walk through that team because I think it's important that you guys not only know who we are, you've seen us a couple of times now, but that you also know who the rest of the executive team is, because the idea is that we're here as a team, and that at any point in time that, you know, any of us may be kind of out and about and interacting with the colleges. And so I want you guys to get to know the rest of the team as well. And then, you know, kind of along with the restructuring, I think any time an organization goes through change and successfully goes through strategic change, it's a process, and it's a process of, you know, kind of constant communication and constant interaction and kind of changing people's roadmaps and changing kind of how they work. And so along with that, we've spent a lot of time re-looking at our corporate culture and trying to redefine how we work and what is the culture that we lead under. And with that, I would kind of refer you to the first slide in your book that talks about kind of the leadership transition and kind of the graphic and some of the core competencies or kind of core values of our corporate culture that we've been talking about. So the graphic on this is on page 116 in your booklets. And this graphic is something, it's kind of hard to read because the letters on the outer circles are kind of a light color, but I think I want to walk you through it because I think it's a really important part of kind of how we're defining ourselves. So in the middle of the circle is really, if you think about the middle of the circle is our mission. That's what we're all here for, is to serve our mission. And then around that inner circle are kind of all the core functions that help us serve that mission. Our programs, our back office finance and accounting, development and communications, legal and human resources. And then that first outer circle is really supporting all of that, which is the chief executive officer position that supports the mission and all of the core activities of the organization. The next outer circle is our board of directors, who also helps kind of support all the work that the CEO and the staff are doing. And then finally, that final outer circle is the board of governors and the chancellor's office. And I think this pictorial really shows that kind of enhanced focus on collaboration and partnership, and the fact that we are more successful when we all work together as part of a cohesive team, and that's the direction we're going. And if I were to continue to expand the circle, there would be the colleges and the college foundations, and perhaps the league would be around there. And my marketing team said they didn't have a big enough page, so we kind of stopped here. But as we've talked about kind of this this vision for how we want to operate going forward, we've been talking about the concept of shared leadership. And when we talk about shared leadership, we're kind of one of the buzzwords is doing more with more, and that doesn't mean doing more with more people, hiring more bodies to do the work. What that means is doing more with the existing bodies that you have and empowering the people that you have in place to be leaders in your organization and do what they do best. And that's what we've tried to do through this transition and restructuring. So we're focused on developing leadership and empowering people at all levels in the organization. We're focused on kind of this concept of participative involvement in the decision making, so that decisions aren't made at a bubble at the top, that decisions are vetted at the bottom and bubble up. And of course, there are always decisions that have to come top down, but we're really focused on making sure that we're being very communicative about decisions that are made. And what we're hoping is that this new environment will help us kind of better define our goals, meet our goals, create a more kind of cohesive team, not only within our organization, but outside of our organization, and really kind of foster an environment of kind of accountability and continuous improvement. The next couple of slides, and I won't go through them in detail because you have them here in your binders, but I just want to introduce the rest of the team. Although they're not here, I would like to introduce their names, and hopefully at future meetings you'll have the opportunity to meet them. So over our programs and services is Joseph Quintana, who's been recently promoted to Vice President of Program Development, and Joseph has been with us, I believe, for 8 years, so he's one of our longest term employees, and really a bright guy. And he's previously managed our College Buys program, which you've heard us talk a lot about, which has been incredibly successful and one of our most successful kind of fee-for-service business type programs. And so the idea here is elevating Joseph to a role of leadership where he can help mentor many of our other programs and services, whether they're fee-for-service or grant-funded, and help kind of broaden the skill set and diversify revenues in those areas. In air quality programs, we actually broke out air quality into its own kind of leadership pod, because our air qualities represent a full third of our business right now, between our contract with the Bureau of Automotive Repair and our vehicle repair, retirement, and replacement for motorists program. And so those programs fall under the leadership of Mark Carlock, who's our Director of Air Quality Programs. And Mark's just recently joined us, I believe in July. He does office out of Southern California, out of a home office in Southern California. And this is another great initiative that we think is a lot of has a lot of opportunity going forward, and a lot of opportunity to expand maybe into green technology. Right now, we're very heavily focused in automotive, but there's a lot of opportunity in green technology as well. Finance and accounting is under the leadership of John O'Sullivan, who's our interim vice president and CFO, and John was most recently our controller and has been with the organization, I believe, for over 5 years, so very well grounded in the organization. And you just met Vanessa Wang a bit earlier, who's over legal and human resources and is our general counsel and also our corporate secretary. And then to the right of me is Carrie Wood, who you've met before, who is now our Vice President of Resource Development and Communications. And one of the things that we've done with Carrie's role is expand her role beyond just fundraising and resource development, but to also include communications, so that everything that comes out of our office, whether it's internal, external, to a funder, to marketing, it all has that same voice and all has kind of that same leadership. And so with that, I would, that's the team. Again, I hope that you guys have the opportunity to meet them. We're really very proud of the team and have accomplished quite a bit over the last 60 days and looking forward to the year to come. And with that, I would turn it over to Carrie and maybe ask Carrie to talk a little bit about the Kresge study.
Okay.
Thank you. Want to do a quick time check. Are we doing okay in that area?
I'm just checking on that now. Oh, okay, so we're good. So maybe we can allow maybe 10 more minutes for this
We'll make it quick.
presentation, then we need to move on. Thanks.
Thank you. So at the last Board of Governors meeting, it was requested of us to give you an update on the Kresge-funded capacity building study that was conducted last year. So I thought what I'd do really briefly is give you a little bit of grounding on the purpose of the study, how it was conducted, and then we'll talk about next steps. The goal of the study was to assess the current capacity of the colleges throughout the system on their fundraising abilities or their capabilities, but also on other earned income and other revenue generating kinds of activities. So it was really to get a snapshot of where the colleges are in those areas. We also wanted to determine what kind of tools and resources the colleges felt they needed and need to be able to further themselves in these areas, in revenue generation areas. So that was the basic purpose of the study. And early last year, we had a very in-depth conversation with the Kresge Foundation about a very large grant that we hoped to be invited to propose to them, which is along the lines what Member McDougall brought up, which is to better support the colleges in building capacity and how the foundation can play in that role. So our proposal to them was, how can we sub-grant dollars out into the colleges to give them more resources for funding their staff? How can we provide and be a statewide hub for resources such as research to help them discover what kinds of donors are out there in their communities, databases, all sorts of materials, things that they need to be able to provide those kinds of services. And they were, while I think impressed by the proposal and the complexity that it represented, they asked us to come back and do a study to, of course, get some data to back up the need, which is what this is all about. So a broad perspective, and these slides are in your packet as well, but there were 280 participants that were interviewed. There were phone interviews, there were face-to-face interviews, there were focus groups, there were benchmarking studies where we went out through a consultant, by the way, and talked to other colleges and others, college systems in other states to find out what they were doing. So just to give you a bit of a snapshot of who was interviewed, college presidents were interviewed, college foundation executive directors, and so on. Excuse me. There were, the next slide just talks about the challenge and, how we can develop the colleges into building a culture of both philanthropy and revenue generation that is creative, that is forward-thinking, that's innovative. And as you know, among the 90 or so college foundations, district foundations, there's a wide variety of different sizes and shapes and all sorts of things that one looks at when they look at how successful a foundation is, or maybe those that need some room for improvement. And as you may know, there are several foundations that are inactive completely. So as we've talked about, I think in other Board of Governors meetings, there are a wide variety of foundations and varying successes. So the key themes that came out of the study, which won't surprise you, and you'll see in front of you here that they feel they need more staff to really carry out the work. They also feel they need more training. So how they can help their staff grow and become better at the art of seeking funds, but also how they can learn how to build upon social enterprise type activities. As you may know, there are several colleges out there that have swap meets on their campuses. Obviously, they generate funds through their theater and other ways that help the college offset some of the expense shortages. So there was that kind of feedback that came through. And then there are, really is a need that came out loud and clear about how can the colleges share the pockets of innovation that are going on. So there's a lot of really good things going on out there, a lot of important activities. And there are a lot of college presidents that are actively engaged in fundraising and social enterprise type activities as well. How can the colleges work together to share those ideas and help mentor those colleges that need to be lifted up? So those are some of the key findings, and just wanted to share those with you first, and then now talk about where we see the future going. In our conversations with the Kresge Foundation, they brought along a couple of their colleagues with other private foundations, and we had a discussion about what they felt this needed to look like in order for several foundations, not just Kresge, but several, to come together and help fund the colleges and help build them up through these capacity building dollars. And what came out loud and clear is that they want to see how it ties with student success. They want a very clear correlation about how additional revenue will make the student experience and the completion rates grow. So we took that to heart and have been in conversations with the Kresge Foundation and others throughout this past year. But we thought the timing is actually quite remarkable with the completion now of the Student Success Task Force coming to a close with the recommendations. They really are excited to learn more about this and to figure out how we bring the two together. So looking at the needs of the task force with the ability to generate revenue, I think will be a very strong correlation. So that was a very, I think, important piece of information that they shared with us, and I think the timing is excellent in that now we take it to that next step. Let me see if there's anything else I want to make sure I share with you. So there is right now, there are 5 colleges that are engaged in social enterprise academies. There is a group, a nonprofit group, that trains colleges on how to create earned income kinds of activities. So I wanted to share that with you because these colleges are really seeing some success. They're working very hard to develop plans, and we hope that that will be a model that can be expanded upon. And we know that the Kresge Foundation and others are very interested in that kind of training and that kind of activity. And then really they want to see us, they meaning the funders, want to see us create a business plan that will ensure that the college presidents, the leadership of the colleges, tie in their strategy with the college foundations and make fundraising and other earned income opportunities very closely related. So that was another key message. So this is where we're at. We are in a place where we have a place to launch from now, where we have some good information that we can share with them about student success. It's where we take it from here. And we have had a number of conversations about creating a statewide task force, a focus group, a think tank of sorts, to be able to look at what is needed to really make this a very plausible, very realistic plan. So I'll stop there and open it up for any questions.
Vice President Perez and Member Izumi.
I just want to commend you guys on taking the time right now to do a thorough analysis of opportunities that you have to streamline processes as well as strengthen the organization's leadership as you continue to move forward. I do want to commend you on that. Secondly, what I do want to ask is there's an elephant in the room because there's this other organization out there that has a very similar name. During this interim period, has there been any consideration at all about having discussions with that other organization? I think it would be a good time to actually approach that, particularly where there might be overlay of, services provided or opportunities to really clarify what each organization is doing.
Yeah, that's a great point, Alice. And when I was speaking earlier about our office in LA and the funding stream that is at risk, that's one of the programs that we run alongside the other foundation. And so that has actually, I think in addition to the leadership transition, kind of that, the change in that program has prompted conversations with the other foundation's CEOs. So we're very preliminary in those conversations, but I think there is interest on both sides to have those conversations and find places where we might be able to collaborate and or relieve some of the confusion that it exists, because it does. There are some places where we compete with each other, and then there are some places where I think there's good kind of synergy where we could come together. So it's a great time to start talking.
Member Zumi?
Well, I also want to echo what Vice President Perez said about commending you for what you've achieved, especially during this time of transition, which I know is a very difficult time for any organization. But I've been very impressed by the way that the team has come together and been able to really become a stronger organization during this time. So I want to commend you for all of that. And it was a terrific presentation. I know it's been very informational for, I'm sure, not only the new members, but also members like myself who have been on the board for quite some time. It's always good to have this type of orientation and, kind of see, what the organization is doing in, real more detail. I'm just curious, you mentioned in the Kresge analysis that you looked at Florida, Illinois, and North Carolina as benchmarking systems. And I just wondered, what were those states like, when you looked at them? I mean, how were they different than California? I mean, what were some of the things that might have been, that we might learn from those other states?
That's a very good question. The main difference, I'll start there, is that they have, in most of the cases that are listed here and that you mentioned, they have a centralized system office, and they have a lot more. They're smaller, of course, and they work more closely from the statewide hub. There are, they all kind of report into the statewide hub as opposed to our 72 districts. So less cumbersome, more centralized services. And so there were some really good success models that were shown through that effort. But again, they are smaller and more statewide centralized in their focus.
Other comment? Member Baca.
Thank you very much for the presentation this morning. It's been very, very informative. I have a question regarding alumni outreach, but I think I'm going to save that for a time when we're not meeting. But I do have a couple of questions, or rather requests for update on a couple of things. We've talked about the OSHA fund this morning, as we have all along the way. But I want to know, is there anything specific that you are doing in order to expand that fund?
We are keeping that very closely at the top of our priority list to ensure that it is part of our fundraising plan. Because of the matching dollars now not part of the process, it's not as attractive. However, my strategy in that area is that we work closely with the colleges out there who don't have an endowment fund or very small endowments, so that they can really benefit from being part of this, larger pooled income fund. So that's the first strategy. And then we keep it as part of a menu of options when we're working with donors and other funders to ensure that it's always a part of a conversation to support student scholarships.
Okay, so it's just right now, it's just a general effort in essence, so. Okay. The other question I have has to do with the veterans proposal that you have. Can you give us a little bit of an update on that?
Sure, we've been working with JP Morgan Chase, as you know, and thanks to Member Ramos for his connection, of course, there. We are very pleased to get final confirmation that JP Morgan is lead sponsor for the Veterans Summit coming up. And subsequently, we have submitted a proposal, a larger proposal, to support veterans across the system. And it's somewhat conceptual. So the good news is that we have room to work with JP Morgan on what that overall plan looks like. There are several components that have been put in this proposal that have to do with coordinating services throughout the state through a website, so that there's one place where all of the veterans can go and they can find resources not only for their own personal needs, but also for workforce development, job placement, those kinds of needs. Then, of course, you know more than anyone, because you've were really integral in putting together the basic proposal, that there is a need for a coordinator, someone who can be that point person to bring all of these resources together and ensure consistency across the system. So there are various components, grants to the colleges to help provide additional veterans resource centers. Some of these centers, as we understand it, you may help us clarify, are at a place where with just a few additional dollars they can really do some tremendous things, and some that just need funds to start a resource center.
So at this point, the proposal is still in development with discussion with JP Morgan Chase, and I also assume the Chancellor's Office staff.
We've all been working together. The proposal has been submitted, but the good news is that it's not through their formal processes yet. It is being vetted with their leadership, and they are very excited, actually. A recent conversation with them last week about what this could look like. So the good news is still a bit in clay formation. We can mold it and make it what it needs to be, both for the system and for JP Morgan.
Well, thank you very much for your work on that, and certainly Member Ramos, I'll thank him for his efforts on behalf of the community colleges, and of course JP Morgan Chase for their contribution to the summit, as well as their interest in pursuing additional work with us.
Okay.
And thank you.
Okay. I want to thank all of you. Very nice presentation, very informative. Board members, if it's all right with you, I would like to take lunch now. Vice Chancellor Garcia, if it's okay, could we get you on after lunch? It's at 12:45. Reason I want to do it is we have quite a number of things to go over this afternoon, and I suspect we will have a number of speakers on the Student Success Task Force that would like to give us their thoughts. So with that, we're going to break for lunch. Lunch is downstairs in the Maddie Lounge, 3rd floor. Chancellor knows where that is, right?
It's where the Senate chambers are.
Right.
And if you, I guess I should say, you go down to the 3rd floor and it's left of here, left, use my left hand, I guess I'm not going to tell you the direction because I'm not sure, but I do know I can point. And so there's where the Maddie Lounge is for the Board of Governors.
Okay, we will reconvene at 12:45.